Good evening. Good evening, everyone present here and watching us live in Facebook. This is Rudranarayan Das taking this privilege to warmly welcome all of you to World Human Sciences and Management Conference 2021 and 22. Invitations to global dialogue on agnotological context, disciplinary practices of social sciences and policy frames, an initiative towards think time and rethink episteme. Distinguished participants, partakers, it's a glorious moment to extend my warm wishes on behalf of Center for Adivasi Research and Development. As this organized by CARD in collaboration of Management Sambalpur, Central University of Odisha, and Ravenshaw University, Cuttack. On behalf of Center for Adivasi Research and Development, I want to convey my heartfelt gratitude to our patrons, Professor Dr. Sanjay Kumar Nayak, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Ravenshaw University, Professor Mahadev Joyswal, Honorable Director, Indian Institute of Management, Sambalpur, and Professor Sarath Kumar Palita, respected Vice Chancellor, Central University of Odisha. The convener of this largest virtual conference, eminent Indian historian, Professor Chandi Prasad Nandaji, an eminent policy activist, writer, and philanthropist, Mr. Charudat Panigrahiji. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know that the main outcome of this conference is to come up with a national and international framework for the education system in future. The crux of this conference will be the use of digital technologies such as artificial intelligence and augmented reality that is being increasingly adopted after the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope this conference would help students, faculties, and researchers, and all who want to learn and discuss several matters and listen our experts to develop their mental horizon and help the education system to adopt the best in future. Ladies and gentlemen, our center is a leading research-oriented institution promoting ethnographic, empirical, and evidence-based research for engaging and addressing the challenges that 21st century globe is facing today. Ladies and gentlemen, the prime agenda of our institution is to come up with potential policy solutions for social change while believing in the idea of debate, dialogue, and discussion. The institution focuses on marginalized communities and work for their livelihood to protect culture, nature, and language and also identity in particular. As you know, this is the only constant phenomena for societal purpose to work for them is methodical and avoid paradoxically frameworks which is neglected so many centuries from theory to become practice. Center for Adivasi Research and Development sincerely believes in the concept of social marketing, which is seriously looking for non-profit marketing and builds new social entrepreneurship for check and balance mechanism to glorify generations to come. Center for Adivasi Research and Development come to serve with the holistic approach of critical thinking in education and to fill the gaps and plan accordingly for the voiceless communities of our state. It gives me a tremendous contentment to introduce me, the most esteemed personality of today's symposia, and our guest speaker of this evening, Professor Dr. Gopa Nayak ji. Dr. Gopa ji, we wholeheartedly welcome you to World Human Sciences and Management Conference. We are very much curious to hear from you, and we are very much excited to listen your ideas on the said topic as you suggested. Gopaji is currently the Director of English Language Center of OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat. As an educationist and a researcher, she earned her D.Phil from the University of Oxford. After her initial education in India and Hong Kong, her formal education in psychology, sociology, and education, she has been teaching in India, Hong Kong, and the United States for over 30 years now. Creative writing has been her passion, both in English and Odia, her mother tongue. Uh, she has also been translated Odia literature into English. A major influence on her writing comes from Sanskrit scholar from Harvard, and Harvard that her father was. The unique cultural mix of hierarchy and equality of Odisha represents, and the multicultural world that she was exposed to for a prolonged period in her adulthood. So welcome, ma'am, to World Human Sciences Management Conference. And the topic is as suggested by you is the gender and leadership, the case of the first citizen, which will be a very important and burning topic of this 21st century. And with this note, I'd like to stop here and invite Dr. Gopa Nayak ji to initiate her talk. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this glorious platform. Digital University is just a concept maybe, but you all have shown it that it can work. I'm really delighted to come to this platform and share some of my thoughts with you all. Is there any way I can share my PowerPoint?
Yeah, ma'am. You can share your PowerPoint from your device. Yeah, it's visible, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. You can continue now.
Okay, I hope it's visible now. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
First of all, let me take you straight without wasting time. Why I chose this topic. Recently, we got the 15th President of India, the first citizen, as I call her. And there was a lot of discussion about her ascribed and her achieved identity. And what was disturbing to me is that instead of her achievements, both friends and foes were focusing on her ascribed status. Now, what do I mean by ascribed status? She was being promoted as a woman. She was being promoted as somebody from some community. And she was being promoted as coming from a state, which incidentally I also belong to. Even though I'm proud of my state, when it comes to my professional life, I would rather be recognized as someone who has been to this professional position, not because I was born to some parents, not because I belong to a particular family, not because I belong to a particular community, not because I'm the wife of someone or the mother of someone, but because of what I have earned as an individual. And that sentiments kind of echoed inside me as I was reading about her, because we share a lot in common. She was from Ramadevi Women's College, where I had also done my intermediate, and I had been to the hostel of Ramadevi, and I've seen how students live there. And I mean, I was proud that one of them has become the first citizen of India. But at the same time, there was a kind of perhaps a sadness, a kind of agony, that till when should women in this country or in this world, in this universe throughout, not only in my country, but everywhere, women should be judged on the basis of their belongings and not on the basis of what they have managed to achieve, where they have come to. And that was the driving force behind the topic that I want to talk about today. What do I bring to the table? I bring to the table my knowledge of, or rather my education of sociology, my passion with psychology, which was my first degree that I did in Ravenshaw. And when I saw the collaboration of Ravenshaw University with this, that kind of touched a chord in me. And one of the motivating factors which prompted me to associate with this organization, if I can call it that. And then I was not only hooked to the topic because of my education on both gender and leadership and the psychological and sociological intersection in which this stands, it also, as I described before, it also somewhere touched my own personal anchoring in the state from which our president comes from. Regarding the plan of the talk, I think Dr. Jaina has already told me that the talk will be for 1 hour, and then we are open to questions and discussions. I want to first decode what is the meaning of first citizen. To be very frank, first citizenship or first citizen, the term in itself, is perhaps nowhere mentioned in the Constitution of India. But as I was reading about the president in the Constitution of India, there are certain interesting facts that kind of caught my attention. And I think the present discussion, sometimes very derogatory, perhaps have their roots in those political traditions that we find ourselves in even after 75 years of the Constituent Assembly. Here I should bring in the discussions that went on with Rajendra Prasad. I think Rajendra Prasad came afterwards, but it started in 1948 with B.R. Ambedkar, when in 47, the debate went on regarding who is the president, what should be the president addressed as. And let me kind of tell you that there was a lot of debate about, and in the first version, I think there was that there will be a president, and in bracket, there was Rashtrapati in the English version of the Constitution, which went through a process of editing and debates and discussions. And then the word Rashtrapati was kind of dropped from the English version, which only had the president. Now, as a language teacher, I found it very interesting, because even now when I translate, I try to keep up the local connotations in the English word so that whoever is reading the translation can make a cultural connection. And this is very important, because translation is anything that is in English, which is a foreign language, or some people vouch that it is a second language for us Indians, still cannot be treated without its cultural moorings. And hence, perhaps the first draft had, there will be a president bracket Rashtrapati, which was encoding the true spirit perhaps of president. However, in the editing when the Urdu and the Hindi version, or the Hindustani version as they called it that time, came. And then there was the word of Rashtrapradhan, and then there was the word of Rashtrapati in Hindi, which was adopted. And when I heard this derogatory comment about our president, I was first shocked, angry. But then when I read the debates that had gone in the Constituent Assembly at that time, about 70 plus years back, I think it struck a chord somewhere and made me realize perhaps all this discussion kind of can be traced to that earlier division that still rocks this political atmosphere of this country. However, the first citizen or the president is the president, and that's it. There should be no gender difference whether the president is Rashtrapati and whether the Rashtrapati person is referred to as him in the constitution. Whether the constitution should be amended or not, it's not my prerogative to express. However, the fact remains that the president is the president. It symbolizes a position, and it should be accorded irrespective of the gender. Now, coming to gender, it was very interesting because when our constitutional fathers framed the constitution and made provisions for a president, they were kind of influenced with the British system of parliamentary government. And though there were references of many of these experts going to the American system of president, we somehow decided that the American system was not suitable for us because we were used to the British system for so many years, and hence the British system was perhaps easier to follow for us Indians. And the only difference was that in Britain they had the monarchy, and we decided that we do not want a monarchy, but we want to choose a democratic citizen who should be the first citizen of this country, or who should be the president of this country. Now, the thing is that, however, the influences that the British system gave us, it's very interesting. When I was searching for literature, I came across an article which narrates an incident dating back to about 1822, when the English wanted to celebrate their success over Napoleon, and the statue of Duke of Wellington was being constructed in Hyde Park. And that time, Citizenship perhaps very openly connected it with the male, with military, and political citizenship was absolutely restrained to this brave male person whom women considered their protectors. And it's very surprising that the statue which was built in Hyde Park in memory of that victory of Duke of Wellington was collected by the woman, the royal woman, or the woman in high positions from women of British society. So the fact is, why am I saying this? Now, when there is anything about women and the secondary position of women, few social scientists often refer to the concepts of Manu, where he had perhaps described that woman has to remain under the guardianship of her father, and then her husband, and then her son. And then there is another cultural connotation which has been discussed, and which I went to because of my own personal fascination with that. And that's about the Hanuman Chalisa, which has become a big controversial, kind of prayer. Anything which Hindus associate, I think, somehow becomes controversial or tends to become controversial. And in that Hanuman Chalisa, there is a line which says, which kind of equates women and animals and, the lowest caste people, and uses a word called tadana, as if it is justified to use tadana. This word tadana is, in simple language, means perhaps ill treatment, but there have been experts who have claimed that this language was Abadhi, and in Abadhi it means examination or parakhna or understanding. So what I'm trying to say is that when we are tracing the present practices onto something of a past heritage, we need to be very careful, and we need to understand that instead of demeaning the heritage, it is perhaps better that we give up those past baggages that we are carrying and take our thoughts and place ourselves in the 21st century that we are living in. And hence, gender becomes a very, very complicated, but a very common theme that everyone has to deal with, not only women, but I think men more so ever. Hence, putting gender discrimination as a completely Indian thing based on some mythical resources should not be attempted or should not be encouraged. And it is not only that, in the past, women were secondary citizens in, which is a question mark, in our country, but all over the world. So why bring in this divide, East-West divide, and say that women, Western education has given women freedom and Eastern education discriminates them, and all these things. So what I want to say that 21st century women or 21st century leadership, 21st century India must come out of its cultural baggage, be it Western or be it our own. If we can, be proud of our heritage and try to see what really our forefathers meant when they said that women need to be under the guardianship of father, son, and husband. If at all it's not applicable, please feel free to shun them. Nobody, nobody can question you, but you should be justified and not make false accusations or false positions. That's what I want to. So gender and citizenship should not be looked at from a cultural lens is my premise on which I want to take this argument further. And there is no such thing as Eastern thing good or Western thing good. Whatever is good in both the systems should be taken. So that's my first thing, which I will end with. So I'm starting the premise with a cultural definition of what women represent today, or how women are perceived today. Whether it is right or wrong, it's for us to examine and evaluate and perhaps come to a rational understanding. Now I'm coming to the leadership model. Now here I'll come to a little academic, and here I've taken the 4C model, Peto Conceptual Framework for Leadership. Now the 4C model, why I have taken, there's a purpose, because I want to see or examine or put our precedent under this leadership model and kind of perhaps reflect on how she fits into this model and whether we can call her a leader in her own right. So that's the purpose why I've taken this model. So this model will form the background or the theoretical framework under which I will examine the president as a leader. Right. So the first, this is a 4 C's, means the 4 C is character, competence, context, and communication. And this is the conceptual framework for leadership, which has been used in many different contexts, especially in education. However, in this occasion, for this lecture, I'm using it to examine the leadership abilities of our president. Now here, a little bit, I will unpack the 4 words, that is character, competence, context, and communication. So character includes all the characteristics of the individual, that is the sexual orientation, the racial roots, the age, and the appearance. Here, and the second part is gender, personality, values, outlooks, and attributes. Now here, there is a difference between sex and gender, which has been, sex is a biological construct and gender is a social construct. People often make mistakes in putting them together, and this differentiation as a biological and a social construct is becoming more and more apparent or more and more distinct as we see LGBTQ rights coming up, gay rights coming up, and all these things. And hence, I want to make a distinction there. In terms of race, I want to track it back to the citizenship slide that I had put in the first one. In India, now, citizenship, we see a debate between citizenship by birth and citizenship by descent. What do I mean by that? Descent means if your parents are Indians, you are Indian, and birth means if you're born in India, you are Indian. So that debate is taking very communal colors and being interpreted in many ways. In this perspective, though, our president represents a community, a race, if I may call that, the human race, which is indigenous to this country or this nation. And people also have made remarks about that, whether it was a smart political move to kind of avoid the distinction of citizenship by birth and citizenship by race, I'm not sure. But at hindsight, when I look at it, I think no one could be more Indian than the current president. Coming to the next one, age. She's in her perhaps the golden period of her life and the perfect place to be the president of India. Why? Because she has the experience, she has energy, and she has the vision based on her experience that where she wants to, how she wants to see the nation in another 5 years, where she wants to see or take the nation or see the vision of a nation unfolding. And her experience of both personal and political life perhaps gives her the expertise to navigate this country through the times coming. So in this character, which I put in her personality, this is how I judge her or examine her. Who am I to judge her, but examine her? If we take in a purely academic term, This is not a social term that I'm using when I'm saying judging or examining. This is a purely academically when we are judging her on the basis of her gender as a character. And the last but not the least is the appearance. There's so much of talk about her dress, how she has got the indigenous tradition of cotton weaving and into the national and the international platform is something commendable. People are writing about her. I do not want to call it a sari. It is more than a sari. Her dress, her way she puts it, she has given it a new meaning and taken it to different heights altogether. So when I say that the president has character, this means that she represents her sexual role, her racial roots, her age, and her appearance in the most magnificent manner that is possible. And when it comes to the psychological factors are something that has to be assessed by the people, and they are very subjective. However, when we look at her gender roles that she has performed as a mother or as a wife, when her life story comes out, I have written about it and I'm reiterating it, that she should not be judged because she was a widow fighting for her rights, or widow who has sacrificed herself for social service. Rather, she should be looked upon as a woman who can fight for herself and for her community, for her state, and for the nation. This is where this is the lens through which I want to look at her gender. Now, the next one, personality. A look at her shows how positive a person she is. The smartness, the elegance, the grace which she carries herself is something which can be a model for women of this country, if not in the international sphere. Values, we do not know what her values are, but the values that reflect through her actions are enough to see that she has a character of her own. Outlooks and attributes, multiple examples of that has already been discussed in social media. Here I want to point out that many criticized her and started comparing her with Radhakrishnan. Somebody did with Abdul Kalam Azad. I mean, nobody meaning the philosophical contributions of Radhakrishnan or the scientific achievements of Abdul Kalam. But my only question is that, is only a scientist a citizen of this country? Can a housewife also become a citizen of this country? Like I said, does a widow alone has the right to fight, or does every woman have the responsibility to fight for her rights? So we should not be judging somebody on the basis of their educational achievements. Everyone has achievements in different ways, in different spheres, and they should be acknowledged, perhaps, and our president is the best example of that. Now, coming to the competence, the second C, it includes leadership qualities or skills, we call it. Why skills? Because it can be trained. That's the difference between a skill and a quality. High emotional intelligence. What is high emotional intelligence? If you know how to control your own emotions, and if you know how to care for other people's emotion, that person is known as a highly emotionally intelligent person. And the president has shown in many occasions that she not only knows how to control her own emotions and rise above her own personal tragedies, but she can also think about people from her own community when it is about tribal rights or about other things that she feels strongly. And then motivating and empowering others. It's nothing more can be told about that. It's self-explanatory from her life events. And specific expertise determined by role and speciality. Like I just gave the example of Abdul Kalam and Radhakrishnan, she has her own expertise, and perhaps her own expertise is something which cannot be measured, and it's as valuable, if not less, than that of scientific achievements and philosophical contribution, which is social service, which is working for others, which is knowing how poverty hinders people, how your ascribed positions in life pull you down. So these things no one perhaps knows better than her. Thus she has competence in my examination of the leadership model that I have adopted. The context. I have already highlighted some of the cultural issues of the context in which her gender is defined and shaped. The physical and psychological, plenty of examples. Physical means she comes from a remote corner of the country. Now everyone knows about Odisha. At a time when I came in the 1980s to Delhi, people used to look down upon us because we were from Odisha. It was like we were untouchables, you know. So there was prejudice against people of Odisha. And now people, my students raised their eyes and said, oh, ma'am, you are from Odisha. That means, you know, so the physical and the psychological and the cultural and social environment, everything, she comes from those places and she has made come up to another place. That context kind of makes her worthy of the position that she has been given, I would say. Now, communication is the last C. Communication, verbal and written. When she speaks, I just listen to her taking her oath. As a language teacher, she has her own accent. She did not try to ape a foreign accent. She was comfortable in whatever she was saying. That itself shows that the point that I will go next is the interpersonal and intrapersonal communication that she is capable of doing. And the fact that she has already got followers in Facebook in 6 days' time, that the fact that she congratulates sports people in Twitter speaks of volumes about her penchant for communication. There may be experts helping her, but the drive definitely comes from her. Next, I will take you to these 4 things, and the reference from where I have taken this model is down below in that slide. The personal I've discussed, where her self-perception and her self-awareness comes into all the 4 C's that I have talked about. The interpersonal, in which how she perceives herself and how that perception affects others, especially in one-to-one relationship. And then the team. The team is the group with whom she interacts. And in the organization level, the sheer fact that she was selected or elected, selected to be the candidate and then elected to be the president, speaks about her interpersonal, intrapersonal, and her teamwork and her organizational skills. Right. When I had actually written in my blog about her as a first citizen, and then somebody commented that if you belong to the something majority party, then you can also become the president. I mean, I was thinking there are so many people in the majority party. Why was she selected out of everything? Definitely, she deserves to be the first citizen. And these are the things, these are the leadership qualities, the personal, the interpersonal, the team, and the organizational level communication that she's able to foster that has perhaps made her first selected and then elected as the president of India. Now I'll come to the broader theme of women and political leadership. And then the reference I've given here. Political leadership generally has all these 4 constructs that have delineated from this article. The literature is vast. I have picked up these 4 because I felt that these 4 features could be examined in the context of our president. And that's why I have picked those features. And I will show or try to justify how her political leadership comes from the political culture, the family responsibilities, the self-perception, and the ideological motivations that have perhaps driven her into wherever she is today. The political culture, now let me take you to the next slide. The political culture, the right to vote, right to get elected are the 2 major themes in political culture. Now in India, we had the right to vote, especially in Odisha, if I'm not wrong, Bihar, or the undivided Odisha perhaps got it in 1922, the right to vote, women got the right to vote, whereas, at almost the same time, women in US got, and this is one evidence that I picked up from the literature, that even though they got it in 1920, women voters' turnout did not equal to men until the 1980s. And today, in the US, women are more likely to vote than in United States. I do not have data from India, but there was one reference to India which was a study done in 2002 by Pinter and Gratz, who say that women are less likely to vote in India. I do not know how far this is true and where this data is taken from. However, my experience shows that women cannot be standardized in India. There are many educated women who do not go to vote. There are many uneducated women who take a leave from their work just to vote. So there is no correlation between employment and the willingness to vote, between education and the willingness to vote, and perhaps even no correlation between the economic condition of a woman and her willingness to vote. Now, the similar right to get elected. We have ample examples in our country of women in political life. However, we do not know whether these are confined to political families or people from non-political backgrounds, especially women. Are they in the political race to get elected? That's something not very obvious. If we look around, we find all women perhaps have some kind of political routings which has driven them, perhaps motivated them to come to politics. If we look at our present president, if I'm not wrong and if I've read it correctly, perhaps her father was also involved in a very community level politics in her own village. And that could have been the motivating factor driving her to take up the cause of people or social service, which brought her to politics ultimately. I mean, that's not new. The professions of our families always motivate us. Like I am a teacher and because of my father. So that's very natural. But whether people who are not from their family background with a decade, that could be an marker of how the political culture or the culture of a country or a nation motivates women to join politics, or political leadership is determined by that or not. Next, I'll go to the cultural barriers. One is perhaps family resistance, and illiteracy perhaps could be there, but we have seen also that people who are not very literate, have not got university education, have been elected to positions, political positions or electoral positions. However, family resistance is a very, very common theme that not only women from political backgrounds, but other professions also face. And family resistance comes because of the conventional expectations from women as childbearers, as mothers, and as caretakers of their families. Women have fought against this, especially in India, and women have manipulated their way through this, and they have come out. However, it remains a factor, and it's a cultural barrier, not only in India, but throughout the world, where women have chosen to take career paths other than restraining themselves in the home. The gender gap in politics is also determined by the interest in political matters and the political knowledge. Many women, it has been proven, this is the evidence that I've cited, that mostly women are not interested in political affairs. They are not interested in gaining political knowledge. And perhaps that is one of the barriers which restrains them from going into political leadership. Now, I'll quickly take you through the point. I think we have another 10-15 minutes left. Cultural and political leadership. This is cultural women's level of represented throughout the political process. Like if we see the present president, she started doing social service at her community level. Perhaps she never dreamed that she would become the first citizen or the president of this country. So the process, political process, is very important, where women are given recognition and acknowledgement for the work they're doing. Like the person said that if she would not have been in the most popular party of the country, she would have never become the president. That's a given. But then the thing is that the onus also is on the political party to acknowledge the contribution of women who are kind of working toward or working and taking responsibilities in their party. And these other things are from a woman's decisions of the political process includes the one's decision to enter politics, to the party for the selection of those people as candidates, and then the decisions made by the voters on the election day to choose her as their leader. So all these things are not only one-sided, it requires a lot of commitment from the part of the person and a lot of social and interactional forces which make her go into political leadership. The most important factor which I want to highlight is religion, because this is a very controversial and very emotional issue. And in judging religion and political leadership, people often take a very emotional attitude, or they are at times irrational. First of all, let me tell you that no religion, it's official, no religion promotes women participation, in the sense that they feel that women are inferior to men in political leadership. It cuts across all religion, right? And then that is all the major religions. So, and I mean, I read a very interesting, what should I say? Social media post, India on the path to become a Hindu Rashtra. Why? Because the president is a vegetarian. The president gets up at 4 o'clock to do Aarti, and that is why India is going to become a Hindu Rashtra. This is what religion does. If I am a professing Hindu, if I choose to be vegetarian as a first citizen, am I asking everyone to become, am I asking the nation to become a Hindu Rashtra? So, I mean, this is how religion is manipulated to kind of meet agendas of interested or vested groups, and that needed highlighting. This is a very important point. I have a lot of international exposure. I remember when I was in Oxford and when people were talking about marriage is a very interesting topic to ask an Indian woman, because they think Indian women are exploited. They think Indian women don't have freedom. So, I was asked, did you have an arranged marriage? And for them, arranged marriage is something where the freedom of the woman is completely curtailed. I'm not saying that it is not. It could be. It may not be also. It could be the most liberating experience for an Indian woman after marriage. Many arranged marriages are successful. So the thing is that the portrayal of an Indian woman in the international sphere is as important as the realization of the Indian woman in the Indian context. And I think the election of a woman as the president of India sends a very strong message to the international community. And that is one thing that we should not forget, that the position of our nation and the respect that we give our women should be highlighted. And those who are responsible for putting up the image of our country should, I'm not saying do not say the sad stories, put the good, bad, and the ugly in the same platform. Why only the ugly? Why only the bad? Why discriminate, or why not the good ones, right? And I think this is going to be one of the most influential international images that India can boast of. The last one, what I want to end my talk with, that women are not a monolithic group. They cannot be put under one category. You can't say that women, the class is very important for women. The race is even more important. Ethnicity is, we all know. Sexuality is becoming more and more a very important determinant of women, and religion. So all these factors need to be taken into account when we judge somebody or when we examine somebody in the lens of a woman. Are we taking her class, and is she more similar to the men of her class than to other women? Perhaps that's something that we need to bear in mind when we are looking at women. And all these factors are really important. The last but not the least, which I want to end my presentation with, is that when our forefathers derived the term citizenship, and when they decided that the president will be somebody who is elected from the people, they clearly said that the people themselves or the elected governments cannot represent the people, because not everyone will be represented through them. So the president will be such a voice who will speak for the minority, not only for the minority, but she or she will be a voice for everyone, so that she represents the people of the nation. And this is a very significant study, not in India, but outside, who have said that if minorities are not on the table, how will laws be designed and implemented for them? So now, with the president, with the 15th president, who comes from perhaps a minority group, an underprivileged, she has experience of underprivileged society. She has worked for the downtrodden. She knows what lack of education or how education can be an expensive commodity to buy. She knows how overcoming the barriers of gender responsibilities can hinder your progress. And that's what we look up to her as, and not only as a woman and a woman alone who needs to be looked through the lens of our cultural heritage, be it Manu or be it the Western lens. We need to see her as the first citizen of the country who stands there on behalf of all the other citizens of this nation and who has shown that she is capable of representing her gender and being an effective leader. So the fact remains that the president is the president, her gender and her leadership styles should not be camouflaged by the other variables that somehow look very tempting. She should be examined, she should be acknowledged, she should be respected as the first citizen of this country. And that's all. I rest my argument. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for a wonderful deliberation. Now I would like to invite Dr. Vikram Kesri Jenna to carry forward the session. Dr. Jenna.
Thank you so much, Madam, for your very kind and very informative information you shared with the global audience. It's the Mapping Mind series of invitation to global dialogue. You rightly mentioned so many part and parcel of the citizen, first citizen and gender, how privileged and underprivileged, and you differences between how marginalized community represented, as well as how this particular the challenging task for the political society in particular 21st century, how the world is witnessing today. Here is some of my submissions and my underlines. I want to some of your lights. Madam, what is your assumption as a when you targeting the 4 C's and you elaborating the 4 C's, how the challenging part is most crucial and important? When somebody from the marginal community, and somebody you rightly mentioned about your struggle in 1980s, when you told someone you were from Odisha and people sweared and people can't believe what Odisha it means. It's indicates about the identity politics, right? And where if you suddenly believe the Ghanshyam Shah's theory and Partha Chatterjee's theory or Ranjit Guha's theory about the political society, the shifting patronage of paradigm of a new political arena or political philosophy is concerned, how do you look particular the marginalized community is representative? Do you believe any changes of their life in next coming 5 years?
Well, I'm a very optimistic person. I have seen changes in our community, in our nation, in my own town of Bhubaneswar. Every time I visit the place, I find a lot of positive changes. Not to mention that the crime rate has increased. But the thing is that how can a society not change? A society will change. There are good people in the society. What we need to think about is that how can we make the good more visible, more effective? There is no society where the bad doesn't exist. if we can term anything as bad. But the thing is that we should not be pessimistic about it. The duty of those who are privileged enough or those who have opportunity is to work against the barriers, whatever it is, cultural, linguistic, what we did not have in Odisha that Haryana had. Only thing we did not have was our motivation to make our presence felt. And that motivation has to come from inside. Nobody can give us that motivation. So I do not think that the marginalized class should ask for sympathy. Rather, they should think that I will or we will strive for whatever we want in spite of our hurdles or hardships. And I personally believe that hardships are triggers, they're motivations. They, work as, kind of, what do you call them? Drivers for achievement. So I think that marginalized, anyone, irrespective of whether they come from a privileged class or from a marginalized class, if they don't have their own motivation or desire or capability to reach or to do something, how can they do it? And if they do, so why take these man-made or weaknesses into account, is my answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam. And the second question for you for today's night. Madam, when Lalu Prasad Yadav's son called her as we need Rashtrapati, we don't need Rashtramurti. The social media fight between and the electronic media fight fought over every night you're discussing in the 9 time prime time. What do you believe when somebody, a political mature person, a chief minister candidate said we need Rashtramurti, we don't need Rashtramurti? What is your comment on particular this quote unquote Rashtramurti?
See, we are a democracy, right? We have given everyone the right to speak. The only thing is that you do not have the right to offend me. And that too, you do not have the right to insult the position of the president. However, people often forget. That was even better than the other derogatory comment from the opposition leader. So the thing is that it is their perception. If perhaps, the president also thinks this way and she doesn't even care for these comments because she feels that she should not be wasting her energy in countering these comments. But of course, as a citizen of this country, we have to examine first, like we think that whether she deserves the position of being the first citizen or not. And if is, who cares if you call her Murti or whatever.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Citizen as whoever it is. Only by the sheer fact that he is an elected representative doesn't give him more power. I have an equal power and I have an equal voice in a democracy. And as I said, the president speaks or is there on behalf of the citizens. And she is our voice. And perhaps India has finally found a very pertinent voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam. And the third question for you. Madam, everybody is saying in particular when the candidature declared by the BJP party or NDA government represented by Modi 2.0, everybody knows BJP is always in election mode. And perhaps this year last Gujarat's election and immediately then after the Hindi heart belt, tribal belt or marginalized belts election should be going to be fought. Then here is, it's a political strategy by the BJP. They came front first time in Indian democracy is concerned. The lady face and a face from the marginalized community. Those are community always treated as very underprivileged, underserved, and very unreserving. What is the strategy of this political party or the one of the largest political party of the globe? How do you assume, or what is your assumption to look at the situation to bring Mahamahim Draupadi Murmu as the candidature of president? They have any political strategy or any political benefit for them, or any kind of strategy from Odisha? Because Odisha is not a very big state, only 21 MPs representing us in Lok Sabha. This is a proud moment for all of the Odia people. There is no doubt about it. But at the same time, what kind of strategy you have looking upon, because you are a fantastic writer and you are a political analyst too. How do you look at the situation? How they overcome from these crisis of the presidential candidate?
First of all, I do not claim to be a political analyst. I have interest in political matters, and that drives me to write about Prime Minister Modi. I have written many things about him, which I wanted to highlight about him. Now, the first thing I want to counter everyone who's saying that it is a strategy. What's wrong about having a strategy? First of all, isn't every political party there to win votes and win elections? So what's wrong about having a strategy? First thing. The second thing is that if this strategy is to win the hearts of the Adivasis, because Draupadi Murmu, president, is an Adivasi, what's wrong? Aren't Adivasis also citizens of this country? Isn't it time that they should be recognized as one? What's wrong? If you haven't recognized them, and if you think only Radhakrishnans and Kalams are to be recognized in this country as first citizens, aren't you being partisan? Should education be the criteria of citizenship? When India became independent, did we say that only an educated scientist will become the president? No, we didn't say that. We said that every citizen has equal rights, and that equality has to be shown not only in words, not only in the constitution, but in practice as well. And perhaps BJP or Prime Minister Modi has the, what should I say, the courage to bring in a tribal leader and make her the first citizen of this country. And if that is a strategy to win over the hearts of the people, why not? Because political leaders have to win the hearts of their followers. That's a strategy. So in that strategy, if they have used the strategy of bringing one of the most unrecognized class of citizens of this country and giving them a prime position, I don't see anything wrong in that.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much. And looking forward for future engagements, I would like to Rudranand Das go for a official vote of thanks.
Is there any other question from anyone?
Yeah, ma'am. There is a question on the chat box asking by Professor Shubham Das. The question is, it's really a great pleasure to see a woman from marginalized community to be the president or a first citizen of our nation. But my argument is whether she would be allowed to exercise her constitutional rights without any pressure, because we have witnessing a legacy who have extreme loyalty to the party line are chosen as rubber stamp president, instead allowing her to act as the real executive or PM.
Is the question on the chat box?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, why do you find pleasure to see a woman from the marginalized community as the president is the question you should be asking yourself. Why do you think that she should be looked not as the president because she has the capabilities to be the first citizen of this country, but because she is a woman. And why is that premise? And that premise is completely wrong. A woman is an individual and she has her own talents and abilities to reach up to that level. She was not picked up from a marginalized community and made the president. She has worked through it. Now, secondly, when you say rubber stamp, who coined this word rubber stamp? What is the meaning of rubber stamp? Are we, if I agree with, several of my articles when I write, people have addressed me bhakts. That's a very common term to use against anyone. I don't have a right to admire somebody. Is my intellectual ability only to be judged when I criticize somebody? Don't you think admiration requires more critical acumen than criticism? So the thing is that rubber stamp is not the right word. Now, secondly, she has time and again shown that she has a mind of her own. And not only that, irrespective of whether she is going to put her mind or not, the Constitution of India makes the president a representative of the people of India. The fact that whatever political leadership is doing, she's part of a political leadership, and yet she is the bridge between the political leadership and the people in general. So if she feels that the political leadership, which is a popular leadership, is doing things that are supposed to be done for the people of India, and she puts a stamp on that, why should she be termed as a rubber stamp? And why should be a woman only be a rubber stamp? That's all very mistaken arguments that we are going to. So it is time we kind of demolish this argument that a woman cannot have a mind of her own, that a woman has to be a rubber stamp, that there will be political pressure on a woman. Just because she's a woman from a marginalized class, she will give in to all the pressure. That's a complete irrational argument, I would say.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful answer and wonderful deliberation. Thank you for joining us and sharing your values, your ideas, and your thoughts in World Human Sciences and Management Conference, or giving you wonderful and valuable time to our audiences. Ma'am, you rightly mentioned several issues countering in our country in these days on the particular political scenario, who is talking about some irrelevant matter or irrelevant words about the President of India, Honorable President of India. You are very much wonderfully mention all these aspects, that how should we go with our constitutional right, and what a woman or a individual do, and what is the capabilities of a woman. Right, you are very clearly you are mentioned about, and these are very clear points to the citizens of our country and our audiences. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us in World Human Sciences and Management Conference. I'd like to thank all the institutional support all the institutional support for this intellectual gathering are Ravenshaw University, IIM Sambalpur, and Central University of Odisha, and our respected patrons, Professor Sanjay Nayak and Professor Sarath Kumar Palita and Professor Mahadev Joyswal for their relentless guidance to do all these kind of intellectual discussions. I'd like to thank all our conveners, Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda and Professor Charudatta Panigrahiji, for their wonderful relevance and wonderful relentless effort to motivate us to organizing such kind of deliberation or such kind of conferences. I would like to thank the mastermind entire these and the whole gatherings, Dr. Bikram K. Sirjana, the Director, Center for Adivasi Research and Development, for finding such a glorious minds of our country and abroad to discuss on the burning issues of this 21st century world after pandemic. And thank you all our card members who are behind the screen, and all the media persons who are with us. And thank you all the researchers, students, still since 1.5 years. Thank you so much everyone for joining us, and thank you ma'am again for joining us and sharing your wonderful thoughts. The meeting is concluded.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be with you all and to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you ma'am. Thank you. Namaste.
For your appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Jena, for inviting me, and I look forward to more collaborations and interactions with you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Goodbye and good night.
Good night, ma'am. Informative session, ma'am. Wonderful information.
Thank you. Thank you.
मैं पटना बिहार से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ मैम,
बहुत ही अच्छा।
और आपने बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण जानकारियां दी हैं। मैं काफी देर से सुन रहा था, बहुत सी बातें नोट करने का भी अवसर मिला। कुछ समस्याएं हुई, इंग्लिश थोड़ी हमारी वीक है, मगर हिंदी में ही मैं बोल पाता हूँ। मगर आपने जो भी बातें बताई मैं समझा भी, मैं सुना भी, और जानकारियां अच्छी मिली।
हाँ।
और प्रेजेंटेशन बहुत ही जबरदस्त रहा।
और ये हिंदी और इंग्लिश की डिबेट
प्रेजेंटेशन में आपने नहीं एक्चुअली क्या है मैम, समझ तो जाते हैं, मगर बोलने में थोड़ी हम हिंदी भाषी में बोलते हैं तो इसलिए कर थोड़ी परेशानी। लेकिन हाँ, आपने जो प्रेजेंटेशन दिया है ना, मैंने उसे समझ लिया है। और आपने जो बताया है वो सच में, मैं तो मीडिया जगत से हूँ और इसमें वास्तविकता में काम करने की चीजें हमें ये यहाँ सुनकर इसे फील्ड में उतारने की जरूरत है।
हाँ।
आपने जो बताया है, लोगों में अवेयरनेस करने की जरूरत है। यही तो पत्रकार का काम है। एक शोधार्थी एज ए पत्रकारिता मतलब हो गया शोधार्थी। अगर हम पत्रकारिता करते तो ऑलरेडी हम शोधार्थी ही है। और वो विषय कोई भी हो,
हमेशा
विषय
आंदोलन से होता है, भाषा से, बात से बहुत कुछ हो सकती है। ये इसको समझना चाहिए।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
मतलब एक
चर्चाएं होती रहनी चाहिए। चर्चाएं होने से ही बहुत सी बातें सामने आती हैं। और उसमें जैसे अभी जैसे कोरोना काल से लगातार मैं देख रहा हूँ कि लगातार जो ये वेबिनार वगैरह, ये गोष्ठी वगैरह जो होते हैं और जो प्रेजेंटेशन हम लोग के बीच आए हैं कोरोना काल के बाद, ये बहुत ही मतलब आप कहाँ और मैं कहाँ, आज आप हमें नहीं, मैं नहीं जान पा रहा था आपको।
नहीं, सही में बहुत ही अच्छा।
धन्यवाद मैम, आपसे बहुत कुछ जानने का अवसर मिला। धन्यवाद। थैंक यू। गुड नाइट।